If you've ever driven through the Midwest on Christmas Eve, you know the feeling. Snow pressing in on both sides of the highway, the radio cycling between static and carols, headlights cutting through just enough white to make you realize how alone you are out there. Tonight's story is about one of those drives, about a man who did everything right, took every precaution, and still never made it home, and about the security footage, the dash cam, and a decades-old holiday legend that might explain what stepped into his car on a frozen stretch of Michigan highway. You're watching Midwest Mysteries. I'm your host. On this channel, we dig into long-form, allegedly true horror from the heartland of America. Unsolved disappearances, strange recordings, and cases where the line between true crime and the paranormal gets very, very thin. This is the story of 27-year-old Adam Walker, his Christmas Eve drive to see his parents, and why truckers in Michigan's Upper Peninsula still refuse to pull over near mile marker 188 after dark. Let's start with what was found. December 25th, 2016. It's just after 2 a.m. A state trooper named Dan Kessler is working the overnight shift on US 2, a long, lonely highway that cuts along the southern edge of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, keeping Lake Michigan on one side and miles of forest on the other. The storm that had been in the forecast all week had finally arrived. Heavy, windblown lake-effect snow. Visibility, in Kessler's own words, was a bad joke. On the dash cam, all you can see is white, more white, and the occasional reflective post whipping past. Dispatch calls him. Unit 12, we got a report of an abandoned vehicle at the Cut River Bridge rest area. Gray Honda Civic, engine running, driver's door open. Caller was a trucker passing through, didn't stop to check, said it gave him a bad feeling. Kessler sighs into the mic. There's nowhere else for him to be anyway. No one in their right mind is out in that weather. He turns off onto the small loop that leads to the rest area. The trees here close in more than on the highway. The snow seems to fall thicker. His dash cam shows his headlights sweeping over empty picnic tables and buried trash cans. And then, there it is. A gray Honda Civic, parked at an angle in the farthest space from the building, engine idling. Headlights on low beam, driver's door hanging open, half packed with drifted snow. Kessler pulls in behind it, leaves his red and blues flashing to light up the scene, and steps out. The wind immediately knifes through his uniform. Powdery snow whips at his face. He notes a few things right away. First, there's no other vehicle in sight. The rest area is completely deserted. Second, there are no footprints in the fresh snow leading away from the driver's door. Just a dark, shallow oval where a single set might have been before the wind filled them in. Nothing going toward the woods, nothing toward the building. Third, the car is still warm. The driver's seat is pushed back a little farther than he expects, like the driver was a tall guy. There's an open bag of gas station beef jerky in the cup holder, half-finished bottle of Mountain Dew, a phone mount on the windshield, but no phone in it. On the passenger seat is a wrapped Christmas present, carefully labeled, "To Dad from Adam." In the back seat, duffel bag, neatly packed, half-zipped, with a Chicago Fire Department paramedic jacket folded on top. But there's no driver. Kessler does a full sweep of the rest area with his flashlight, checks the restrooms, knocks on the maintenance closet, walks the tree line. Nothing. When he gets back to the car, he notices one more thing that makes his skin crawl. The radio is on, turned down low. A Christmas carol plays. "Oh, come, all ye faithful." But there's something wrong with it. The music drags and wobbles in pitch, like the station is struggling to come through. And every few seconds, like an echo just offbeat, there's another voice underneath the choir. A man's voice, humming just a fraction behind the melody. Kessler leans in and flicks the radio off. The feeling of unease doesn't go with it. On paper, the car is registered to Adam Walker of Chicago, Illinois. In reality, Adam Walker was a lot more than just a name on a registration. He was, according to everyone who knew him, the last person in the world you'd expect to end up in the middle of an unexplained Christmas disappearance. Born and raised in the south suburbs of Chicago, only child. His dad, Mike, was a retired lineman who'd taken a job years ago maintaining his cell towers in the Upper Peninsula. His mom, Janet, worked part-time at a library. When Adam finished his paramedic certification, he stayed in the city, working on an ambulance crew that did everything from Southside shootings to holiday heart attacks in high-rises. He was good at it. A coworker later described him as the guy who kept talking to patients even when they were unconscious, just in case they could hear him. His girlfriend Riley said he was the kind of man who texted when he arrived anywhere, who nagged her to put an emergency kit in her trunk, who never ever took unnecessary risks. He wasn't religious, but he loved Christmas. Not the stuff in church, but the lights, the food, the chance to sit for a day and not be called to a scene where someone's worst moment was happening. Christmas 2016 was supposed to be special. For the first time in years, his schedule and his parents had lined up so he didn't have to work. No holiday overtime. No, I'll swing by late if we don't get slammed. He had 3 full days off, starting the 24th. The plan was simple. Leave Chicago around 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Drive 7 hours north to his parents' rental cabin near the town of Way, Michigan. Crash on the couch, wake up Christmas morning, hand his dad that wrapped present in the passenger seat. It was a new ice auger, according to the receipt found later in the glove box. Mike loved ice fishing. When Adam clocked out from his last shift that afternoon, his crewmate snapped a picture of him in the ambulance bay, still in uniform, Santa hat crooked on his head, a goofy grin on his face. He sent it to his mom with the caption, "On my way soon. Tell Dad to keep the beer cold." At 5:51 p.m., cell tower data shows his phone pinging near a gas station on I-94 west of Chicago. At 8:03, it pings again near Green Bay, Wisconsin. At 10:17 near Escanaba in the UP. During that stretch, he made multiple calls. At 6:02, he called his mom on speaker. She later described the conversation. He was teasing me about overcooking the ham, doing his usual thing. He said traffic wasn't bad, a little snow starting near Milwaukee, but nothing serious. He said he'd probably lose signal once he got past the bigger towns, but he'd text when he hit the bridge. By the bridge, she meant the Cut River Bridge, a dramatic concrete span over a deep gorge and frozen river that every local knows, and every out-of-towner remembers the first time they drive over in winter. He called his girlfriend at 9:15. Riley was at her sister's place in Oak Park, half watching a Hallmark movie. He was in a good mood, she said later. He was playing stupid Christmas music, singing off-key just to make me laugh. He said the snow was really coming down, but he'd stocked the car with blankets and a shovel and all that. I told him to pull over if visibility got bad. He said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm a professional," in that sarcastic voice. That was the last time I heard him laugh. The last outgoing text from his phone went out at 10:32 p.m. It was to his mom. "Should be there around 1. Roads are nasty, but I'm making good time. Don't wait up if you're tired." She replied immediately, "We'll be up. Trees lit. Drive safe." The message shows as delivered. It was never marked as read. By the time Trooper Kessler found Adam's car, the Walker family had been sitting in that tiny cabin, staring out at the swirling snow in an empty driveway for almost an hour. They did what families do in those situations. They rationalized. Maybe he'd stopped for coffee. Maybe he'd pulled over to wait out the whiteout. Maybe he'd fallen asleep at a rest stop. By 3:15 a.m., when the knock finally came at the door, his mom said she'd had one thought, over and over, cycling in her head until it settled like ice. Something happened to my boy on that road. You can hear the echo of that sentence in every interview she's given since. Back at the Cut River rest area, Kessler called in the plate, secured the scene, and had the Civic towed to the nearest state police post. The real work began the next morning when the storm finally broke and a thin gray daylight crept over the UP. Detectives traced Adam's route from Chicago, checking gas stations and tolls. It turned out Adam had a dash cam, a little black unit stuck to the inside of his windshield. It had kept recording until the car battery cut out around 3 in the morning. What was left on that card is why this story ended up on this channel. The dash cam footage runs like this. We see Adam's perspective as he drives north through the dark, occasional passing headlights sweeping across his face. About 10:45 p.m., snow starts hitting the windshield harder. Wipers on full speed. The road ahead narrows into a tunnel of white. He slows down, his hands at 10 and 2, shoulders tight, but his face calm. At 11:06, he passes a green sign. NAUBI is 25 miles. We know from his odometer that the Cut River rest area is only about 15 minutes ahead at that point. Around 11:15, the radio crackles. He's tuned to some Christmas station out of Escanaba. Have yourself a merry little Christmas fades in and out under a wash of static. Then, over the music, you can hear it, a faint, irregular beeping. If you've ever worked on an ambulance, you recognize it instantly. It sounds like a heart monitor. Later, audio techs will run every kind of analysis they can think of on that clip. They'll isolate the frequencies, overlay known EKG beeps. The pattern isn't exact, but it's damn close. On the video, you see Adam glance at the radio like it's the problem, then give an embarrassed half smile to himself. He mutters something under his breath. Investigators slow it down, boost the volume. It sounds like, "You're off duty, man. Chill." At 11:21 p.m., something appears in the headlights. At first, it looks like a trick of the blowing snow. Then the shape resolves into a person, staggering along the shoulder just at the line where pavement meets the soft drift. Small, thin, no reflective gear. Adam brakes hard. His seatbelt catches him. The dash cam shakes. He swears, clearly this time. "Jesus, hey, hey, hey." The car comes to a stop about 20 feet past the figure. The hazard lights come on. We see the door open on the driver's side. The interior light glows weakly through the snow haze. He leaves the dash cam running. For about 30 seconds, the camera stares at an empty driver's seat, blinking hazard lights, and a wall of white. The audio, though, keeps going. We hear the muffled slam of the door, the storm, louder without the glass in the way. Then Adam's voice, faint. "Hey, you okay? You're gonna get yourself killed out here, man." No answer on the audio, a few seconds of crunching footsteps on packed snow. Then something that has divided everyone who's listened to it. There's a voice that answers him, very soft, very close to the microphone, like it's somehow inside the car, even though the lens is pointed at an empty seat. I fell, it says. Cold. I'm so cold." The accent is odd. The vowels are flattened. Could be Yooper, could be something older, rural. Adam says, "Yeah, no kidding. Come on, I'll get you warmed up at the rest area. It's just up ahead. You got a name?" Long pause, then, "Danny." On the enhanced version, it's clear. Danny. From there, the story the footage tells is simple and horrifying. Adam brings the person, Danny, back to the car. He helps him into the front passenger seat. We never see the boy's face. Every time he moves, it's just outside the frame or blurred by snow on the windshield. We know a few things from what the camera does catch. The kid is small, maybe 12 or 13, wearing some kind of dark jacket that looks soaked through. No hat, no gloves. His jeans are stiff with ice. When he settles into the seat, the whole car seems to exhale a cloud of vapor, like someone opened a freezer door. Adam laughs nervously. "Dude, you're an icicle. You're lucky I'm a nice guy." The boy's breaths are visible in the air, thick, white streams. But, and this is the part that unsettled even the seasoned troopers, the temperature display on the dashboard doesn't change. It stays at 24 degrees F outside, 68 degrees F inside. Steady. No drop, no fluctuation. But Adam starts shivering. He cranks the heat, points the vents toward the boy, puts the car in drive, pulls slowly back onto the highway. They talk. Mostly it's Adam filling the silence. "Where'd you come from, man? You got family around here?" Silence on the audio for a few beats. Then the boy's voice was, "On the bus. We went in the water. I'm so tired." On the original transcript, the detective doing the notes underlined that sentence 3 times. We'll come back to that. The next few minutes on the tape are strange. The storm seems to get worse, then abruptly ease off whenever Adam passes into the faint light of a roadside reflector or mile marker. The radio cycles through stations without being touched. Brief bursts of big band music from the 40s. A hymn in Latin. Then just static, under which, if you're suggestible enough, you might hear a constant, low, liquid gurgling, like water moving through a pipe. At 11:29 p.m., we see the green overhead sign for the Cut River Bridge flick past. A few seconds later, the rest area sign. Rest area 1 mile. Adam breathes out, okay, buddy, almost there. We'll get you inside. Call whoever we call up here. You're going to be fine. The boy says very softly, I tried to go home once. They wouldn't let me in, said I was dead. Adam's hands tighten on the wheel. He glances at the passenger seat. His eyes widen. What the? The dash cam never shows us what he's seeing, but we do see reflected faintly in the windshield, just for a second, something like a second pair of eyes, not where the boy's head should be, but higher. Like someone tall is leaning over the boy from behind, their face almost touching the glass. The pupils look blown wide. The reflection is gone almost immediately, swallowed by snow. The car pulls into the rest area. You can see the layout from the footage. A U-shaped loop building in the middle, a line of parking spaces facing the woods. Adam parks where Trooper Kessler will later find the car, the farthest slot, nose angled just slightly toward the trees. He leaves the engine running. Okay, let's get you inside, he says. The passenger door never opens, only the driver's. Adam steps out into the snow, slamming the door behind him. He walks around the front of the car, out of frame. The passenger seat is still empty. On the audio, you hear his footsteps crunch to a stop, and then you hear his voice closer than it should be. Hey, where are you going? The building's this way. Then another voice, the boys. I'm not going in there. They always make me go back to the river. A gust of wind screams across the mic. For 6 full seconds, there is only white on the camera and roaring in the speakers. Then clearly, over it all, will you drive me home instead? Adam says, where's home? There's a pause long enough that some analysts thought the recording had glitched. Then, down. A harsh scraping sound tears through the audio. The whole image jitters, like something hit the hood. The recording cuts out for exactly 1 frame. When it snaps back, the driver's door is hanging open. Snow is already starting to drift onto the seat. There is no one visible in front of the car, no figure in the lot, no movement near the building. And that's it. The dash cam keeps recording static in an empty interior for another 3 hours until the battery dies. Investigators looped that footage 100 times. The official conclusion was that, at some point after pulling into the rest area, Adam suffered either a mental break or hypothermic confusion, wandered off into the woods with or without another person present, and succumbed to the elements. It's a neat theory. It doesn't explain the rest of the evidence. When the storm cleared enough the next day, search teams arrived. They combed the woods for miles around the rest area. Trained dogs, volunteers, even a Coast Guard chopper, when winds allowed. They found nothing. No body, no torn clothing, no blood. There were almost no tracks at all. The high winds and ongoing snowfall had erased most of what might have been there. Almost. On the lower slope of the embankment that leads from the rest area toward the Cut River Gorge, searchers did find something. A short run of footprints. 2 sets, one larger, deeper, matching the tread and size of Adam's boots. The other smaller, lighter. They ran side by side for about 15 feet, then stopped. Not faded, not curved away, stopped. No more impressions led down the hill, none back up. A clean, harsh end, like both walkers had reached the edge of something invisible and simply stepped off. The official report chalked it up to drifting snow, overeager eyes, mass hallucination. But when a reporter from downstate pressed one of the volunteer firefighters who'd been there that day, off the record, the man shook his head. There was no drift, he said. 2 sets of the tracks, clear as my own hand, then nothing. I'm not saying what happened. I'm just saying I know what I saw. At this point in the story, if you're like me, you're already hearing echoes of something else. A bus, a river, a boy named Danny, and you're wondering if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the first time someone disappeared near that rest area at Christmas. You'd be right. The Cut River Bridge was completed in 1947. It's a beautiful, terrifying piece of architecture. Massive concrete arches spanning a deep cut in the earth, with the river a long way down. In winter, the gorge walls are coated in ice. The water below is black and sluggish. On December 23, 1948, less than 2 years after the bridge opened, a Greyhound bus heading west from St. Ignace toward Manistee hit an unexpected patch of black ice just before the east approach. There are mixed accounts of exactly what happened next. Some say the driver swerved to avoid a drunk man wandering in the lane. Others say the steering linkage failed. The one thing everyone agrees on is this: the bus clipped the guardrail, spun, and went through. It dropped more than 100 feet into the gorge. It hit the ice-rimmed river below and broke through. Of the 27 people on board, 21 died. 6 somehow made it out onto the ice and were rescued by locals who scrambled down the treacherous slope with ropes. Among the dead were a family of 4 on their way to Christmas in Escanaba, 2 soldiers heading home on leave, and a 12-year-old boy traveling alone. His name was Daniel Horvath. His ticket said he was heading to Wainwright to stay with an aunt and uncle for the holiday. His parents in Detroit had saved for months to send him. Divers recovered most of the bodies in the days after the crash. The river was half frozen, visibility near zero. Men in wool coats and primitive scuba gear felt their way along the twisted metal in currents strong enough to knock them off their lines. They pulled up women in winter coats still clutching purses. They pulled up the driver, his hands torn almost to the bone from trying to fight the wheel. They never found Danny. The newspapers at the time made much of it. "Boy lost in Christmas bus tragedy still missing," read one headline in the Marquette Mining Journal. A few weeks later, a smaller piece ran, "Wainwright family reports strange visitation." According to that article, which I tracked down on microfilm, Danny's aunt claimed that on January 5th, just after midnight, someone had knocked at their back door. She'd opened it, expecting her husband. Instead, she said, a thin boy stood on the stoop in a wet jacket, his hair plastered to his forehead, his lips blue. He said, "Aunt Lydia, I'm here," in a voice she recognized. She screamed, fainted, and when her husband came running, there was no one there. No tracks in the snow, no wet footprints on the porch. The reporter treated it like a grief-stricken hallucination. Locals treated it differently. Over the years, truckers swapping stories over coffee at all-night diners along US 2 would bring up the Cut River Kid, a boy you might see on bad nights, walking just off the shoulder, no hat, no gloves. Some said if you picked him up, he'd sit in your passenger seat in silence until you reached the bridge. Then he'd look at you with empty eyes and say, "This is where I get off." And when you looked again, the seat would be empty and your cab would smell like cold river water. Others said if you didn't pick him up, he'd be waiting for you at the next turnoff, a little closer to the center line. People laughed, shook their heads, called it a campfire story. But here's where it stops being just a story. In the 3 decades before Adam's disappearance, 4 other single-vehicle incidents happened within a 2-mile radius of that rest area, all within a week of Christmas. In 1979, a man from downstate drove his pickup straight into the guardrail near the bridge without braking. He survived. Told troopers he'd swerved to miss a kid running into the road. In 1992, a woman slid off the exit ramp to the rest area and rolled her car. She told EMTs at the scene she'd seen someone standing in the lane just before she lost control. In 2003, a semi jackknifed on dry pavement in clear weather, Christmas night, just west of mile marker 188. The driver, who later tested clean for alcohol and drugs, insisted a little boy in a soaked coat had appeared in his headlights. He grabbed the wheel to avoid him. There are more, all brushed aside as holiday stress, fatigue, deer misidentified in bad weather, all eerily clustered around the same spot where, in 1948, a bus went over with a 12-year-old boy on board who never came home. So when people in Wainwright and the surrounding towns heard that a young man had vanished from the Cut River rest area on Christmas Eve while talking on a dash cam to an invisible Danny who'd gone in the water on a bus, the stories didn't feel so funny anymore. Adam's parents didn't care about any of that folklore at first. They wanted answers. For weeks after the disappearance, troopers, search and rescue teams, and volunteers worked that area. They sent divers back into the Cut River Gorge, even though most of it was locked under ice. They dragged the deeper pools. They brought in sonar. They didn't find Adam. They did find other things. Pieces of rusted metal they believe belonged to the original 1948 bus, still down there, twisted into the riverbed. Fragments of old glass, and according to one diver who spoke anonymously years later, something that still bothers him. He said he had been working the deepest pool below the bridge when his light hit on something pale wedged between two rocks. At first, he thought it was a bone. Human femur, white, long, smoothed by water. He reached for it, and the light caught on a faint groove near one end. Letters, D, H. He reached again, heart hammering. His glove brushed it. The bone crumbled into silt. When he surfaced and tried to point out the spot for a follow-up, shifting ice had changed the flow. He was never able to locate it again. Officially, nothing human was recovered that could be connected definitively to either the 1948 crash or Adam's disappearance. Unofficially, the diver doesn't like to drive US 2 anymore. He takes the long way, inland, even in summer. As for the dash cam, it was sent to the lab at Quantico for detailed analysis. They ruled out tampering. No evidence the footage had been edited, no anomalies in the date and timestamps. One technician I spoke to off the record said, "If this is a hoax, it's the most elaborate one I've ever seen, and someone convinced that kid to vanish convincingly for 8 years and counting." Eventually, as they always do, the headlines moved on. The file was thinned out, closed, then opened again every Christmas when Janet or Mike Walker called the Post and asked, "Have you found anything yet?" They never did. But the story didn't die. It changed. It spread. Among paramedics in Chicago, Adam's name became shorthand for what can happen when you ignore the part of your brain that whispers that something is wrong. Among truckers on US 2, the Cut River stretch was quietly added to a mental map of "don't stop there if you can help it" places. And around Nalbanway, an old legend grew a new verse. Mothers would tuck their kids in on Christmas Eve and half joking, half serious say, "If you're ever driving on a snowy night and you see a boy with no hat on the side of the road, you keep going, you hear me? You keep going and you don't look him in the eyes, because if you let him in your car, he's not the only one who's getting a ride." In December of 2021, 5 years after Adam vanished, a snowplow operator working a night shift sent something to a friend that dragged the case briefly back into the spotlight. It was a screenshot taken from his dash-mounted camera. He'd been plowing west on US 2, approaching the Cut River stretch around 1:30 a.m. Christmas morning. Light snow, clear skies, no other vehicles. In the blue-tinted still frame, you can see the right shoulder of the highway, the wall of trees, and just at the edge of the headlight beam, two figures walking side by side. One is tall, broad-shouldered, in a dark reflective jacket. The other is smaller, bareheaded, thin. They're facing away from the camera, walking into the same lane the plow is occupying. The operator, watching live, had slammed on his brakes, heart in his throat. But when the truck ground to a halt and the lights came up, there was no one in the road. No one in the ditch, no one by the trees. The screenshot shows them clearly. Shadows, forms, proportions. But when analysts enhanced the image, they noticed something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The tall figure's jacket had a patch on the shoulder. Even under all the grain, you can make out the shape. A white cross and a blue star, the emblem of EMS, the Star of Life. Chicago Fire Department paramedics wear that same patch. Had Adam somehow joined the thing that took him? Was he the tall shadow now, walking this one stretch of highway with a boy who never reached his aunt's house in Nalbanway? Or is it all, as skeptics insist, tricks of light, faulty memories, and the human tendency to cram random tragedy into neat, haunted patterns? I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you what's on paper. On December 24th, 2016, a healthy, careful 27-year-old man drove out of Chicago to spend Christmas with his parents. Somewhere between Escanaba and Nalbanway, in heavy snow, he picked up, or thought he picked up, a freezing boy on the side of the road who said he'd been in a bus that went into the water. He spoke a name, Danny. He mentioned a river. He said he wasn't allowed to go into houses. He asked to be driven home. A few minutes later at the Cut River rest area, Adam got out of his car. He never got back in. No one saw him alive again. His body has never been found. If this were just a unsolved missing person case, it wouldn't be on this channel. It's the other stuff, the dash cam audio, the decades-old bus crash, the boy whose body was never recovered. The echoes of that story and the words on the tape that drags it into that cold territory between what we can explain and what we can't. So I'll ask you, what do you think happened on that highway? Did a stressed, tired paramedic in a snowstorm hallucinate a ghost from a half-forgotten local legend, walk off into the woods in a fugue state, and die in a hidden ravine no one's found yet? Did some very human predator use the legend as a lure, coerce Adam into the trees, and leave no trace? Or on that Christmas Eve, did something that's been tied to that river since 1948 finally find a man soft-hearted enough to stop, open his door, and say, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you home"? If you're ever driving US 2 on a winter night and you pass the sign for the Cut River Bridge, pay attention to how you feel. Do you find yourself reaching to turn the radio down even if it's not that loud? Do you glance at the shoulder just to make sure there's no one there? And if you have to see someone, a small figure walking alone in the snow, thin jacket, no hat, thumb not even out because he doesn't seem to know what hitchhiking is, what will you do? Would you stop, or would you lock your doors, keep your eyes straight ahead, and whisper a sorry under your breath as you drive on? That's your choice. For Adam Walker, it was his last. You've been listening to Midwest Mysteries. If you found this story unsettling and you want more long-form, allegedly true horror from across the American Midwest, cases that sit right on that edge between the explainable and whatever's out there on the dark roads, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit like so other people can find this video, and check out the other stories waiting for you here. Until next time, drive safe. Check your mirrors. And if you hear a faint voice under your Christmas music asking for a ride home, maybe make sure your doors are locked. Good night.